guy.
No, 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 not Craig. Not Craig. Craig. Please pronounce it
Craig.
correctly.
Craig Ferguson. Hey guys, it's Kristi. Welcome to the middle of our
Krang T.
conversation.
Ferguson.
Yeah, we were having a conversation about a late night American talk show host that weren't American, and trying to remember the name of an obscure Scottish presenter who hasn't presented in probably 10
And did you
years.
know that Jay Leno was from Azerbaijan?
That you made that
That's a
up.
fact. That's a fact.
Is that an alternative fact, Kevin?
That is a Donald Trump fact.
So yes. Well, hey guys, welcome to a happy hour, a Halloween happy hour. Happy Halloween to everyone.
Ooh.
Yes, and we have a guest who is way out of our. She's too classy to be on our show, so we want to thank Eiynah from Polite Conversations for sort of slumming it with us here in the happy hour in the pub, early morning happy hour. So I've got a Bloody Mary ready to go. How are you doing, Eiynah?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks so much for having me on, you guys.
Well, we always love an opportunity to talk to you. Both Kevin and I are big fans of your show. And by the way, for people who aren't already subscribed to Eiynah's Polite Conversations YouTube channel, that is a mirror of her podcast. So it makes it even more convenient. You can subscribe on YouTube and get notices in your subscription feed when her latest episode is up. You can go to the description box below and click on that link and go hit her subscribe button.
Yeah, you can, and you should unsubscribe from me and Kristi and subscribe to her, because that's how it works, isn't it? I think that's how it works.
We want to get her to 4,000 guys, so let's do this as a movement.
That'd be nice. I mean, I've had my YouTube channel shut down like 2 or 3 times now. I lose count, but from like weird false flagging BS.
Well, if you will turn your back on Mohammed, peace be upon him, then that's what you expect, really.
And also, if you piss off Sam Harris fans,
right? Both of them.
Yes.
Well, exactly.
Exactly.
If you reject Mohammed, peace be upon him, in the incorrect way, that's the problem.
That is the problem. Yep, those are the two.
But we're here. Yeah, so Eiynah, this is a conversation that actually you and Kevin started, and Kevin, I'm very happy, suggested a happy hour, because then it meant I could join as well. So do you want to talk a little bit about the inspiration for doing this hangout? And we're going to first talk about Halloween and cultural appropriation, and then later on we're going to get to some very silly drama involving the Robert Mueller investigation and some conservative Republicans. But first,
where a young man possibly instigated his mother in a fraud case, which is fun. Imagine that.
So, yeah, Eiynah, how did this kind of start up and the idea for the hangout?
Well, I mean, I just love Halloween generally, so I'm happy to talk about it whenever. But I didn't have time to do like a podcast where I edit everything. So I asked Kevin if he'd be interested in doing a hangout, and he said yes. So here we are. I mean, there's always so many stupid stories around this anti-SJW, favorite time of the year. Like, oh my God, they're taking away Blackface from us. Halloween is destroyed.
Yes, the Christmas thing has been so done to death. They need to move on and make outrage at every national holiday if they can. So, yeah. So, and Kevin, happily suggested a happy hour. So here we are, and we're going to kick it off by talking about. Well, it started off with Megyn Kelly's comments on NBC, and since then, a lot has happened to Megyn Kelly. So I guess
she's joined the IDW.
Yes, and the ranks of the unemployed. So there's a little bit of background. We didn't actually say who was going to do the background on the Megyn Kelly, but does anyone want to volunteer to just kind of recap from your own perspective what happened, and then the rest of us will interrupt?
She was being very racist and got fired.
Yeah, that's a Cliff Notes version. Exactly. She was on so Megyn Kelly was started over at NBC, I guess a year or so ago. She was wooed over by one of the executives from Fox News, where she was on pretty rocky terrain because she had given Donald Trump a hard question during the debates, and also she was outspoken, or at least just honest, not even outspoken, just honest.
But and of course she was bleeding out of wherever, which is a no-no.
Yeah, that's the question that prompted Donald Trump to go after her character again, as he does with all women, and try to demean them. Anyway,
is her no referred to as a character now? Because that's what he seemed to be going after. That he was mainly the sexism thing, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, you want to say, well, he said she was furious and she was bleeding out of her eyes and bleeding out of her, he was trying to make her sound emotionally unstable.
Well, and he doesn't like that because when he grabs it, he doesn't want to get blood on his hands. That was Jesus.
Halloween, gross out, ew. So anyway,
Well,
yes.
it is Halloween, and in that spirit, I'm dressed up as a sexy / slutty neckbeard. So that's where I'm at right now.
How do you do a slutty neckbeard?
Well, I couldn't possibly reveal my secrets, and I don't know because I'm literally just sat in normal clothing. That's the problem here.
That's your costume.
Yeah.
Megyn Kelly has a 9 a.m. had a 9
I'm,
a.m.
I'm flashing plenty of man boob. Is I think the issue there. Yeah.
Lots of chest hair. Does everyone have that mental picture now?
Yes, I think I got it. Thanks for that.
You don't need to sound quite so fucking disgusted. Jesus. The thing I said earlier was way worse. Come on now.
Well, now we all have that mental picture of you because in your avatar you're lying down anyway. So now we're all just sort of picturing the rest of you lying down on the couch, but with sort of like a shirt
Exactly.
hanging open.
The bit you can the bit you can see. I've got clothes on.
Okay, Megyn Kelly then.
Eiynah isn't trying to keep. This is what my life is like on the happy hour with him. Megyn Kelly had a 9 a.m. morning talk show. It's supposed to be like a kind of a soft morning thing. It wasn't doing great in the ratings, to be honest. But she had an all-white panel on last week, I think it was, or maybe the week before. But in the last
You
10 days.
surprised me. You surprised me that she had an all-white panel on. That seems so unlike her.
And in a discussion about Halloween costumes, she made comments to the effect of, look, when I was growing up in the 70s, it was okay if you wanted to emulate a black artist or a black character to put on blackface. I think she mentioned someone who wanted to look like Diana Ross and blacked up for that. And, and people, and she also said there was whiteface, or, so people would do blackface or whiteface, and everyone was fine with it.
Yeah.
And anyway, her guests were not that happy with her comments. And
Also,
also, sorry, they just finished. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's worth mentioning when she says emulate, that would be one thing. But often when people do blackface, they're not trying to emulate anyone. They're trying to mock and deride.
Right.
Yeah. It's not an honor for the black people involved. It's literally you demeaning them.
But now we understand that even if you want to be like a specific character, you can just do that without painting up your face.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I wasn't suggesting if emulation is okay, but I mean, at least that would be on a basic moral level something less horrific than the actual truth. Yeah.
The reaction in the public and also from her colleagues, of both of white and brown and black colleagues was sharp, and she sat down with some of her colleagues, her African American colleagues, and Kevin, can you mute yourself? Sorry, there's all kinds of background noise, I think, for you.
Sorry, I'm fussing a cat, and that will not be done quietly, so I'll mute myself.
No. Okay, thanks. Yeah, so she got some blowback from her colleagues and ended up giving a tearful apology, realizing, she said, that she didn't understand how hurtful her words were, but her show was dragging in the ratings. It was, she was also not getting along with a lot of her colleagues.
Right.
The one exec who brought her over and was sort of like, her mentor, she doesn't get along with him anymore. There were tensions. And so this seemed like an apt time for NBC to just can her while also paying out her entire contract. So it looks
Which was how much? It was like what,
$63 million.
Holy shit. I mean, that is the life, right? Like SJWs destroy you by getting you like a
golden
payout.
Parachute. Yes. So that's the background of it. And we wanted to talk about, this idea of, blackface and it being okay. It's not. And also the sort of counter of whiteface, which again, I'd never really heard of being a thing. So yeah. Eiynah, do you want to kind of take your reactions to this and your thoughts on the whole Megyn Kelly thing and also the whole idea of blackface? And actually, can I just say first before we start, I had this conversation with a lovely little, not little, a lovely elderly woman, And we brought this stuff up about the blackface.
Was she a little like Yoda? Is that
No,
what
she
you're
wasn't.
saying?
No, that's why I didn't want to be so patronizing. She's actually as like tall as I am. However,
No,
she
was
said, you know,
fucking tiny then. She was a midget, basically. Is basically what you're saying is she was like Tom Thumb. Yeah.
yes, Thumbelina, really. I forget his name. But you know, we had this conversation about it being offensive, and I was trying to explain because she didn't see the offense in it, and I said, well, that might be because you're not the target of it. And
Yeah.
it's not just that people are dressing up in blackface. There's a whole history of
Yeah.
the way it's demeaning and degrading and not just caricature, but like mocking various racial stereotypes and the worst negative kind of stereotypes. And also that this is a new thing. It's not.
This woman. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Hello.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead,
No, I
Kevin.
was just going to say we should point out that this woman was in Wisconsin, so she was white as fuck. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely white. And in Wisconsin is pretty much, well, in the area it is almost entirely white. Although her mother lived in a neighborhood that became progressively more black and stayed at her church. And by the time her mother died, it was an all black church, and her mom had a lot of black friends. And so that change happened, you know, in this case. But just because you have black friends doesn't mean you're culturally sensitive.
Right.
And I was trying to explain to her how hurtful it was, and also how recent it was. I pointed out that there were minstrel shows being broadcast in the UK in the 1970s.
Yeah.
And cartoons, when you would see someone fire a gun in someone's face and the smoke would blow up, that was a callback to blackface.
Yeah.
So,
also, like just generationally, right? Like
yeah.
the levels of sensitivity around racism were different for different generations. So
yeah, and I'll hand it over to you, Eiynah. That was what I wanted to say.
Yeah, so even like you know, minorities of an older generation may have different I don't know, different ways of viewing this and not understand how the younger kids are getting so uptight about this, but it's just because we are evolving as a society and our values evolve along with it. Just like, was it Jimmy Kimmel that did like a blackface basketball player costume in the year 2000, which Ben Shapiro decided to pull up now. It was Jimmy Kimmel, right? Yeah, it was Jimmy Kimmel. In the early 2000s, he did a skit, and Ben Shapiro was all, well, why is the left calling out Megyn Kelly's blackface comment while ignoring Jimmy Kimmel's skit featuring actual blackface in the early 2000s? So you can see how quickly these things evolve. Just even in the span of a couple of decades, Ben Shapiro expects that we'll be equally talking about these two events, even though one happened just now and one happened almost 2 decades ago, which is ridiculous. It shows how much they have to stretch to kind of even get a point in there, you know?
A false equivalence.
A false equivalence, exactly. And that's the same thing with the whiteface thing. Whiteface does not have that kind of history or, I don't know, weight attached to it. So,
well, yeah, and I was just going to say the Tucker Carlson clip was
yeah, he did a
outstanding
segment
because
on whiteface.
yeah, he did a segment on Whiteface, and he it was so bizarre because even he pointed out that one has a history and one does not.
Yeah,
but yet
even
then
he
drew
did, but
then still drew the false equivalence of saying
yeah.
that the person in Whiteface shouldn't be so self-righteous, which was especially funny because his entire show is him being self-righteous about nonsense.
Right,
Now,
right.
for those of us who didn't see the Tucker Carlson clip, because I was really tired and sick and went to bed last night and I couldn't face
Lazy.
Tucker.
Don't make excuses. You're fucking lazy.
There's a reason I don't watch Tucker Carlson before I go to sleep, and that's because it raises my blood pressure. So anyway, can you give a little summary of his segment and what he said?
Go on, Kevin.
Me? Oh, me? Okay. Okay. Usually I have to interrupt to get a word in edgeways with Kristi. Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson had...
Yeah, now we get to interrupt him.
When will the white man ever be fucking heard in this society, really?
You are the vulnerable minority, Kevin.
I am. I'm feeling very vulnerable. There are two wands in the room.
Shut up.
The microcosm of real life, isn't it? This women telling men to shut up. Jesus. Enough of this performative nonsense, right? Yes, Tucker Carlson, fucking white nationalist piece of shit, basically. Although he would claim not to be white nationalist, but I felt to see
of course, yeah.
Yeah, he spreads a lot of far right propaganda on Fox News, including, I suppose, most famously here recently, the South African white genocide bollocks, which then got Trump to actually officially investigate that. So he's basically making American national policy now, which is rather worrying. Yeah, he did a segment about this, defending Megyn Kelly, which I don't think he actually mentioned her by name, did he? But he was essentially defending the concept that blackface is fine, on the basis that this NBC host, a black guy, had whited up for a character who dressed as Susan Boyle, I believe, the British singer, and did quite a good job, actually, quite well. But he did actually point out that one has a history and one was not. So he said, "I'm not going to make the false equivalence," and then made the false equivalence.
Yeah, and then called them self-righteous.
Essentially, that whiteface was in any way equivalent to blackface, which it isn't, because there was never a black and white minstrel show. Oh, sorry, there was never a white and black minstrel show, was there? There were never like white human zoos. You know, it's not the same fucking thing here, Tucker. And so he said, yeah, the person shouldn't be so self-righteous.
Yeah.
Which, like I say, is hypocritical bullshit on his part as well. I mean, it was just nonsense.
Well, it reminds me sort of this newer take coming from the skeptosphere that, you know, all identity politics is equivalent, right? So they'll equate like, oh, how bad like the Charlottesville Nazis are and how white identity politics is the worst. But all identity politics is bad. And so they throw in like, you know, BLM and stuff with the alt-right. And it's just, that's not at all equivalent.
More false equivalence.
Right. People trying to fight for their rights based on discrimination that they get for their identities is not the same as people trying to build supremacist movements on their identities.
Yeah, and it goes with the recent violence we've seen as well. Richard Spencer getting punched in the face is not the equivalent of sending pipe bombs in the post or shooting 11 Jewish people dead in a synagogue.
Well, with the reactions, you'd have thought it would be, it was much worse. There were people that were going on complaining, whining, having it keep them up at night, like for weeks. And I remember this one popular atheist blogger, podcaster posted a link about how one punch can kill someone, and that's why you know, he really shouldn't have been punched or whatever. And look, I'm not for political violence. I was never like, oh yeah, punching him is good or it's okay. But I didn't really lose any sleep over it. I didn't cry about it. Didn't get upset about it for weeks. Meanwhile, you know, something like the pipe bombings happens, and there's like bare minimum said.
Right.
Oh,
yeah,
well, pipe
exactly,
bombs being mailed happens, not bombings. Sorry.
Yes.
Although that in of itself, I mean, I know that was accidental on your part, but they do actually make that argument that, well, no bombs went off, so so we should only be angry at successful, like actually, we should only be angry at competent terrorists.
Right,
Brilliant.
right, exactly. And did you see Steven Pinker's take on that? It was horrifying.
Yes.
What did he say?
Hold on, let me find it.
Yeah,
what did the Pinker? What's he up to? Eh?
I quote tweeted that last week because I was so disgusted by it. Absolutely, I think it said this is proof that Harvard hires morons. I'm pretty sure that was one of my reactions.
Yeah,
I replied directly to him.
Once again, the press gets gamed, giving saturation coverage and agonized commentary to a minor event. It's not major news that a country of 325 million has a few malicious jerks who, brackets, correctly anticipate 15 minutes of notoriety with a vindictive stunt. I mean, fuck, had this been SJWs calling someone wearing blackface racist, Pinker would have been outraged.
Well, it depends how he's spelling the word minor, because if he's spelling it like someone who's blasting coal away, then he might have a point. But I don't think that's what he meant, was it?
No.
No, so he's full of shit.
We should basically tolerate pipe bombs being sent to Democrats is what his message is.
Yeah, we should tolerate attempted mass assassination, but asking me to use your preferred gender pronoun is terrorism.
Right.
And
that's more of a Gad Sad level thing, though. Gad Sad calls everyone intellectual terrorists and whatever.
That is the IDW in a nutshell. is that anything the left do, regardless of how minor, is terrorism. Anything the right do, regardless of how terroristic, is just a stunt or a false flag
Joke.
or
Oh,
whatever.
they're just like, you know, insincere trolls, just whatever, let them be. It's Milo.
Yes. Oh, yeah, it's
Yeah.
just a joke, mate.
Yeah,
It's, you know,
exactly.
nobody died. Why are you freaking out? Some bombs were sent through the post.
Yeah.
Yeah, just it's brushed off. So what they do is they always scream loudly when you even criticize them. People on the right will scream loudly persecution if you even criticize them. But then when something happens to their political opponents, they'll basically try to blame the political opponents for just victim blame. Say you deserve this, you brought it on yourself, or minimize it.
Yeah.
And that is how you know, start down the road of civil war, by dehumanizing people and not having a commitment to a peaceful political process and condemning violence. That's how you end up
But
incorporating violence into your
well,
political system.
they're not dehumanizing you, you fucking NPC. Jesus.
Yes. But coming back to the blackface issue, I remember Saturday Night Live did a skit many years ago. I was still in the States, so it was probably 20 years ago now, about the Cleveland Indians. And in it, they were bought by, like, I think one of the black characters was put up as the new owner of the Cleveland Indians. And they said, we're going to change the mascot to the Cleveland Rednecks. And they brought out this guy, a big member of the staff, who was fat, in like overalls with a piece of hay sticking out of his teeth and a straw hat, and going, "Hey, y'all," you know, and a gap in his teeth, and a picture then of this caricature of the white person being the redneck, and that was going to be the new mascot for the Cleveland, the Cleveland Rednecks.
Well, as you've given me a sports in here,
Oh,
and
no.
specifically
Oh,
about the
no.
Cleveland Indians. No, but it is absolutely relevant to A, the Cleveland Indians, and B, the Chief Wahoo mascot, because that actually isn't the mascot anymore. They've now officially retired that phenomenally racist logo.
Good.
Yeah, and not just that, but brilliantly, the last time it was ever worn, and this wasn't planned because they'd hoped to go further in the playoffs, the last time it was ever worn was on Indigenous Peoples Day.
Right.
Oh.
And then they
In
retired
an
it.
interesting little twist of fate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was just, you know, if white people had to confront that stereotype of a white redneck, and that was the basis of their chants, like, you know, someone like, "Woo, go back to the trailer park, Cleveland fans," you know, that
Right.
would be, white people would see that.
Well,
because
they're
it would be
already
about
so
them.
sensitive. Like I'm sorry to you guys, no offense meant or anything, but I'm already seeing, like, you know, people being like, as a white male, I've never felt so hated before. And like, I remember there's this like far right apologist dude like in my mentions or screenshotting me and just misrepresenting what I was saying. So I just retweeted something about, like, you know, how a white guy as a white guy doesn't understand like where I'm coming from or something like that, and he called it a racial slur. It was a white guy. The retweet was calling him a white guy. That is not a racial slur.
White people aren't used to being called white people. White people are used to talking about black people and Hispanics, but we aren't used to being called white people. We're not.
Yeah, white people are just people.
Right.
Not
Exactly.
black people, brown people. They're just people.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a famous clip, or infamous clip, from outside the Cleveland Indians stadium when they had like a native person just talking to fans, like it was one of these sort of on the street interview type things. And the racial abuse this person received for daring to ask the question as to whether they should have this racist mascot. Just shocking stuff.
Yeah.
Really is. I mean, just appalling. But
And just to go back to Megyn Kelly for a second, like, you know, look how quickly that was recognized now that it's wrong for her to say that. But whereas like a couple of years ago, I remember being shocked even then seeing this. Sam Harris tweeted this article titled, "At the University of Oregon, no more free speech for professors." So I read the article, and it was about a professor who did a costume at a party where students were also coming, even though it was off campus. But the professor wore black makeup on her face and hands and a black curly wig. And I mean, so just because she got reprimanded for wearing blackface, that means there's no more free speech?
No, that's not what it meant.
Like, I mean, she may not have done it maliciously. She may have not had any racist intent, but I think a workplace has a right to determine that that's inappropriate behavior, you
Yes.
know?
But that's the thing. It's so ridiculous on a number of levels. But for a start, it's not fucking speech.
Well, if
That's
you
got nothing to do
consider
with speech.
if you
It's like,
count freedom of expression, artistic expression under the Constitution is counted as speech. So, like exotic dancing they tried to regulate naked, nude dancing, and that was appealed as freedom of
oh
expression
well, I
under the
don't.
First Amendment.
Okay, Kristi, but bear in mind, I really don't give a fuck what the American Constitution says. It's an old piece of dusty shit that needs to be overhauled, frankly. Not gotten rid of completely, but renewed, let's say.
But freedom of
'Cause-
expression counts under freedom of speech.
Yeah,
just so
yeah, I
you know.
agree. Yeah. So fine, but still, right? Like, okay, if that's free speech, then what about, like, I don't know, Linda Sarsour doing anything, just outrages these people.
Yes, yes,
And she
And-
sucks, no
Well, I
doubt.
always-
But
yeah. And Louis
where's the
Farrakhan
free
is
speech?
gross, you know. So
He's
yeah, I mean,
disgusting, absolutely. But
but
there's no defending him like there is Milo, you know what I mean?
no, yeah,
Well,
you're
I
right.
say to these people, all the time, I don't hear you defending like ISIS. If you're a free speech absolutist, I don't see what the problem is there. What's wrong with someone saying death to the infidels?
If your hate
The
speech is
standards
protected,
completely shift.
yeah.
But this is what I don't understand, right? When it's wrapped up in this intellectual thing, then all of a sudden Blackface is up for debate and it's a rational conversation that we're just having because we're so rational. This is about free speech and this poor professor, she wasn't, she was punished for wearing blackface. But whereas Megyn Kelly says it on TV and everyone's able to recognize that that's fucked up. But once it's in this intellectual wrapping paper, it's all different.
Well, what annoys me on a cultural level with all of this is this is the Skeptosphere's version of we're not allowed to say Christmas anymore. That every year that rolls around, they get a season of the year where they can go, oh, look at the SJWs and the blackface and you're not allowed to culturally appropriate thing. And it's an outrage about mild peeving. That's all. When people write these articles about cultural appropriation, they're not like massively outraged about it mostly, but people responding to it are massively outraged.
Exactly. Just like the Apu thing, right? I've only seen people outraged about Apu, the ones that are like Ruben, who's done multiple tweets on Apu being written out. I don't think he should have been written out, yet I was critical of him. I don't think that the creator of the documentary, The Problem with Apu, thought he should be written out either. In fact, I think lots of people suggested different ways to update him, but this was like the easy, shitty way out.
Well, yeah, exactly. And what I especially loved about Rubin's tweets, well, not loved, but found interesting and insightful as to the kind of right-wing shillery that he now does, is that he was tweeting all of those things about Apu the same day that 11 Jewish people were slaughtered in
Right, exactly.
That's really what you want to focus on today? That's really what you're going to be fucking angry about today, of all days?
Until someone not super right-wing said something that upset him, so he had to comment on that. But Katie Hopkins said something really vile and blamed basically the victims for their own massacre. And all Ruben had to say was, insane tweet, Katie. He didn't screenshot her or shame her like he did the non-far right person. Yeah.
Yeah,
Can I also say
the man's ridiculous.
On the Megyn Kelly thing and the response to it, I think the context of her employment was really important because when she was on Fox News and she said Jesus and Santa were white, she obviously kept her job.
Facts. This is a journalist.
When you're talking about Santa, you have to only deal in facts, okay?
Yeah, we have to be factual about this fictional character.
We can't be having one of these funny little coloured chaps coming down the chimney. That would be madness.
He gets shot.
That's the thing. Yeah, in parts of America, he would get shot instantly. Yes, that is the problem. The police would have arrested the motherfucker straight away.
Yes.
And unlike a mass murderer, he probably wouldn't have been taken alive.
Yeah.
But on the context of it, at Emma and at NBC, when Megyn Kelly got her 9 o'clock show, what NBC had to do to give her that hour was boot 2 African-American hosts, Tamron Hall and Al Roker, who were very good and very, like, they were pulling in good ratings at that hour. And they fired those 2 black hosts to put in a white woman. And the other issue about NBC is that it's linked up with MSNBC, which is a left-leaning, more progressive media outlet. So the whole culture at NBC, also it was different. Also, apparently, she kind of brought up on air, and this is something NBC should be taken to task for, the fact that they refused to air the Rowan Farrow coverage of the Harvey Weinstein scandal when it was first coming out, and they kind of refused to do that. He ended up going to the New Yorker, I think, with that story. But Megyn Kelly brought that up on air too. So there were it wasn't just the blackface comment. There was a lot of things in the context. But you're right, being at NBC/MSNBC, where they have a lot of diversity. If you look at the hosts, okay, the evening shows, there isn't so much diversity, but across the afternoons, they do employ people from a lot of different backgrounds, gay and straight, and they're open about that. So it's a much more inclusive corporate environment, and those kind of comments won't stand in that kind of corporate environment where they will at Fox.
Yeah, but what I also have to say is that for however progressive their employment practices are, they probably should get better people in like the contract department. Because if you have to pay out $60 million to a woman who's done 1 year's really quite average work, you're probably not drawing up very financially advantageous or sustainable contracts at your organization.
Well, certainly the Me Too movement has brought up this problem that when men were fired for sexual assault, they would often get paid out their full contract. So they got golden parachutes and were basically, they weren't punished at all for the bad behavior financially. But that's another topic.
Well, exactly, yeah, but I'm just saying in general, like if you're going to hire someone you know is a loose cannon and potentially going to say some racist shit that you might have to fire her for, don't give a 6-year fucking contract that you have to pay out in full. Like, that's ridiculous.
There
is
is
what I'm
one
saying.
thing I did want to bring up before we move off the issue of blackface, and this is an opinion of mine. I don't have any data on this, but my sense is that because blackface, the people who are younger, much younger than me, like 20 years younger than me, or even younger than that, like 16 or 17, who didn't grow up with exposure to blackface or haven't heard of minstrel shows, especially in some kind of, not very diverse areas. I think some of those kids would see blackface as like face paint and not as, like clown paint or dressing up like Mickey Mouse and just making your face white and black like Mickey Mouse, and they don't really distinguish between mimicking a human being and, looking like Minnie Mouse, and they get dressed up or whatever.
Well, that's why we need to educate.
And this is it. I think there's a lot of inadvertent, I think for younger people, I don't think it's maliciously meant. Sometimes it's maliciously meant, at college universities when they have cotton picking parties. Those kinds of things are definitely racist and malicious.
Yeah.
But I do think that because we've done in some ways a good job of removing minstrel shows from the culture, that we should also acknowledge that some people are just ignorant about the horrible, painful history.
Oh, for sure, yeah. There isn't always intentional racism behind it.
Yeah, sorry, I think there's the broader point. No, go on, Eiynah.
No, go on.
No, you're the guest. You're the guest in this house. Speak.
I've lost my train of thought. It's okay. Go on.
Okay, I was just going to say there's a broader point about this, not just the necessarily ignorant of like minstrel shows and things like that, but I think with all of this cultural appropriation stuff, I think most of it comes down to ignorance. Most of it comes down to the fact that they're really not aware. Individually, I don't think people are going out to try and offend, but that's where you need to educate rather than
but with the internet, we all become more and more interconnected, and so we should really know better.
Oh yeah, I'm not trying to excuse it away. I'm just saying there's
no, so that's where the conflict comes in, right? That I didn't mean that you're excusing it. I'm just saying that now everyone's sort of connected with everyone, and different cultures are connected with different cultures. It's hard to claim complete ignorance, Even though
There
you
is,
might just be an idiot, but you really should know better about, like, I don't know, native headdresses and dark face paint, when we're living in a time where all these articles and everything is just like a, one click away. Yes, of course, people get overzealous and claim that, something silly is cultural appropriation and base stupid hashtags on it. Like there was take back the bindi hashtag, which I found really stupid, right? The bindi is like the sticker thing.
It's a red dot, yeah.
Yeah, not always a dot. There's much more fun ones out there.
Oh, apologies. My knowledge of bindi art is limited. Yes, apologies.
Shame on you. There's like a black snake one, which is really cool.
Fair enough.
But I appreciate it when I'm not Indian, but my origins are Indian. I'm Pakistani. And I remember when I was a teenager, it was controversial among my older Pakistani relatives that I would wear a bindi, and I'd wear one to piss them off. Often, because they're like, no, this is an Indian thing. We don't do this. And I'm like, sorry, but you all did this in the 60s and the 70s. And now it's a problem somehow. But anyways.
Areas of contestation are ongoing.
But anyway, my point was, well, someone has to answer the door.
Sorry, yeah. I'm not expecting someone to just give me a second.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say there are more constructive ways of dealing with the issue than, say, individual hectoring of people. I don't think that's going to get people's backs up. I think more generally educating the populace, as it were, the people, as to these issues, rather than specifically. There was the case of I think she was a schoolgirl, wasn't she? Who wore a Chinese dress.
Yeah.
And
she got
something. Really nasty abuse, and you think that's not helping anything. That, I mean, attacking a child for a reasonably minor mistake, like she wasn't dressed up as like some sort of she wasn't doing the eyes thing or she hadn't yellowed up or anything.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. She just wore a Chinese dress. And educating the populace in general, I think, would avoid a lot of these problems rather than going after individuals.
Right, exactly. So about the bindi thing, I've never minded that people have appreciated something that I connect to my culture and my heritage. And I'm happy when I see other people wear it. But there are people who are absolutely livid about it and want to whole take back the bindi hashtag, though that was more like, I don't know, 7 years ago or something. I haven't seen it in a while. But yeah, so just because there are some people who overdo it, it doesn't mean that there's no problems at all out there, right? Like, so for example, if my friend wants to wear a bindi, I'm happy for her to do it, and that's awesome. At my wedding, I had like, a lot of my non-brown friends come, and we all went and shot for like, Pakistani or Indian clothes together, and it was really fun, and they wore stuff at my wedding, and nobody found it offensive, and it was fantastic. But at the same time, I've seen pictures of like completely white weddings that are like Indian themed, where the grooms are wearing turbans and weird like costumey stuff, and it's like, this is not like a weird costume theme. Like, it makes sense if you're connected to the culture in some way, or if you have a friend and you're going to their wedding, or someone gave you an outfit that they got, but it just doesn't make sense for completely unconnected, non-Pakistani, non-Indian people to throw like a turban-themed wedding or something,
Yeah, that is piss taking. That really is. And this is the thing. I've always drawn a distinction, I think, between, and it might seem like a semantic thing or whatever, but between like cultural appropriation and cultural theft. And that's just outright cultural theft. That's not appreciating someone else's culture or partaking in it somewhere. That's just stealing it, wearing it as like a little
like
a costume for the day, and then discarding it like a used tissue. Like, it's horrific.
Yeah.
And also, it might be worth. Oh, sorry, you finish your point, and then I've got one more.
So yeah, I just want to make clear that there are different situations and scenarios and degrees to this kind of thing. It's not an all or nothing situation. That's
Right.
all.
Well, that's, I mean, in a bizarre way of wording it, but it's sort of the IDW people and their ilk see it in a rather black and white way, ironically.
Very literally,
Yeah, that
ironically.
that if you in any way, like if you attack Megyn Kelly for blackface comments and stuff, then you're automatically in line with the people who say, you know, really absurd things like, I mean, I don't know the take back the Bindi thing, but we can all think of examples of people who've sort of overstepped the mark or attacked the wrong targets or whatever. That happens. People being woke, unfortunately, means people will overstep in terms of their activism on occasion.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. Saying it's bad to racially offend people is not the same as saying it's bad to do anything that's slightly problematic.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I want
Yeah,
to
and in April of this year, there was a colonial themed party, which I thought was a really terrible
yeah,
thing
idea.
to do. Like, yeah, and I believe it
Well,
was in England too. Like,
well, yeah,
why
that's
it was
there
titled
was-
"A Night at the Maharaja's Palace." You know, Indian glamour meets colonial chic. What the hell?
yeah, ridiculous. And I remember Prince Harry dressing up as a Nazi as well, rather famously. And that was at one of these parties that was called Colonials and Natives.
Sorry, you
Yeah.
cut off there for a sec. What was it called?
It was called Colonials and Natives was the
Oh
name of
my
the
God.
party. Yeah, and people dressed up as like Zulus and things. Oh God, I mean, just yeah. But that's Britain all over. Britain has actually stolen from the world in terms of raw minerals, resources, people, in many cases, and has continued to do so as in terms of cultural imperialism ever since.
And on
And
that
the
issue,
level of insensitivity is remarkable.
yeah, and on that issue of cultural imperialism, I think part of the reason why white people feel so entitled to just take on other people's cultures is because the media that we've grown up with, the Lone Ranger and Tonto, Charlton Heston playing Moses, or a Spaniard in El Cid, I think he's Spanish in that, Elizabeth Taylor as Cleopatra. The fact is that, white actors have been culturally appropriating all of these roles in taking on, that sort of not even just blackface specifically for the minstrel, but sort of any culture, and thinking that they can, if you just put the makeup on and put the hair like Cleopatra's, then a white woman will be suddenly like a Greek living in Africa 2 centuries ago.
Or yeah, Spike Milligan playing in Indian in Eiynah Fat Mum as well. Like there are
and there's
loads of examples.
Breakfast at Tiffany's. There's lots of this. And so I think part of the problem too is that culturally white people see other white people doing this through Hollywood, or at least they used to. They don't as much anymore. We actually have diversity. Let me finish my point, because I've waited for you guys for so long to make this point. And so I think that provides an unconscious level of entitlement, and also the acceptability that happens for white people that doesn't happen for any other groups. That was the end of my point.
Right, but that was still like
yeah, the guy who interrupts every 20 seconds is out.
That was still like decades and decades ago, right? But right now, when someone is called out for doing something like that, there's still so much pushback. It's still, it surprises me. Like, some people really don't want things to change at all.
No, yeah, and they're kind of stuck in their 20th century thinking. That's what it really reflects.
Classical liberals.
Yeah, well, they're stuck in 18th century thinking. Yes. Right. So do we feel like we've pretty well reviewed the concepts here in the news stuff? Any last points before we move on to fake sex scandals? No, sorry, fake sex allegations.
Kevin, you wanted to say something?
Oh no, the moment's gone.
That's what she said.
Me.
So we have to get at least one. That's what she said. It doesn't feel like a happy hour if we don't. Right. So we're going to wrap this up, that topic up, and move on to, well, it was more because of the news that happened and interest around here. But we're now going to move on to recent revelations that Republican operatives are tried to organize false sexual harassment or abuse allegations against special investigator. No, what's his title? I'm forgetting. What he's
Counsel.
Robert Mueller, Special Counsel Robert Mueller. So, does someone else want to take the background on that and just give a little summary before we start off?
Eiynah.
Kevin,
Eiynah.
you do it.
Oh, okay. I'll do it then. Okay, fine.
Yeah, you work. You're the man. You do the work.
I've got to do the heavy lifting as usual.
This is the
Anyway.
Petersonian segment of the happy hour.
Well, it's only because you want my brutal male domination, obviously.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So this all starts with a guy called Jacob Wohl, spelled W-O-H-L, which is a very American spelling. Instantly, I didn't like him. But he's a guy I'd been aware of for quite a while as a kind of low-level Trump fucking obsessive, basically, right? He's up Trump's ass 24/7, loves him. And he has been, it seems quite obvious to me, guilty of fraud and various other potential felony charges in trying to fabricate a false sex allegation scandal surrounding Robert Mueller to try and discredit him and therefore get Trump off the hook for his collusion with foreign hostile powers and all of that. And this goes back to for the last couple of weeks, he's been tweeting out there's going to be some big revelation about Donald Trump, about Robert Mueller.
November 1st, right?
Yeah, November 1st. So yeah, about a month ago now. Yeah. Yeah, it's going to happen. It was going to happen tomorrow, but it won't now. But this guy called Berkman, who also works with Wohl at the Gateway Pundit, which is a far-right conspiracy website thing, which is most famous for the Krang T. Nelson Antifa super soldiers thing, where apparently there was going to be a revolution by Antifa on July 4th this year, where they were, because Krang T. Nelson, who's a very funny Twitter account, tweeted out that Antifa super. Pardon?
And Tom Bloke, I don't know if you remember him, but he was
Tom
also,
Bloke, yeah.
Back in the day.
Tweeted out that Antifa super soldiers were going to behead white families in the town square. Like, it's so obviously over the top and stupid, but they took it on and ran with it, and it became like a thing.
I really wanted to do like a theme song for that, like Antifa super soldiers. You know, I miss
you're
that.
You're a very 80s child, aren't you?
Yes. It's like Thundercats.
Yeah, Thundercats, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, yes, he. So this essentially fake news website, but fake news in the actual sense. They've been trying to concoct this story through a shell company called Surefire Investigations, which was set up, it seems, by Wohl and Bergman and a number of other people who are listed on the website but aren't actually real. They're stock photos on the website which have been found as stock photos, and one of whom is an actor, literally an actor who's been in like actual TV shows and stuff. I forget the guy's name, but I recognised him and I thought, is that? And it actually is. That's just a picture of the actor, but they're black and white. The picture, they've just put like a black and white filter on it, as if that's going to hide it somehow. I mean, it's just so farcically inept and stupid, this fucking thing. Anyway, so Surefire have been supposedly investigating Robert Mueller's sexual misdeeds, quote unquote, which involved emailing various people, offering them financial incentives in order to falsely sign affidavits saying that he had sexually assaulted them, including one woman who was a professor in Vermont who had literally never met Robert Mueller. So, and she was offered £20,000. She's or $20,000, I should say. She's handed over the emails immediately to Robert Mueller's office, who have released a statement, which is rare because he often doesn't make statements, his office, because it's quite high profile and quite secretive what's going on there, like it's an investigation and stuff. But they made a statement about this and have passed it on to the FBI, which it seems like an open and shut case of fraud. If you're literally offering £20,000 for someone to knowingly falsify legal documents, that's fraud. That's very illegal, and I hope Jacob Wall goes to prison. Now, that's bad enough in of itself, right? It shows the hypocrisy of these people who have literally just finished their smearing of actual credible rape survivor or attempted rape survivor, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, on the basis that women make these false allegations all the time. It's terrible. And yet they were literally at the same time trying to concoct false allegations against someone they don't like.
Right. A lot of it is just projection. This is like what they would do, so they think other people would do it.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If I could say, in some ways, it's unfortunate this happened, because it's it shows the kind of right-wing tactics, the way that they're willing to lie. But on the other hand, it shows that it's very difficult to create a conspiracy and recruit women who have credible connections to the person you want to go at, and engage in a false allegations conspiracy, which is kind of what they were saying the Democrats were doing with the women who are coming forward. And so the fact that they were exposed, and the fact that it was so difficult to actually construct false allegations against a political opponent in this case, really shows how much more credible the allegations were from the women who came forward against Kavanaugh. Because had this been a big conspiracy, it involves a lot of people, it involves money, it involves, the woman, from my understanding, when she contacted the media to talk about her story, when they just did basic questions and basic investigations, she just sort of broke down and admitted, look, they were going to pay me $20,000 and pay off my credit cards if I said this. And so, yeah, it's not that easy to make false allegations that, if you investigate, fall apart if they're false. So
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. And the other aspect of this, because it gets even funnier, but the other very serious aspect of this is that these people cry fake news. The media don't investigate. They're just there to lie and smear and blah, blah, blah. If that were actually true, because there are essentially two reasons they could have been doing this. Either they genuinely wanted to smear Robert Mueller as a sex criminal, or they wanted to plant a false story so that upon revealing that story, they could say, oh, look, the press are total shitbags, right? But the press did their job. They investigated it, as investigative reporters should do, and found out it was a lot of old bollocks, therefore destroying their entire narrative.
Yep. So, yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
It's
but it
not
gets
that
the
easy to
story.
make false allegations.
The story, yeah, indeed. Well, absolutely, it's not. No, especially when you're as ridiculously incompetent as these fucking idiots. Because
and how did his mom play into this?
Yeah.
This is the thing. Yeah, this it gets even funnier, right? So all this was so incompetent. They were fake people using stock photos, which they could. You don't even need to be an investigative reporter. You just need to right click and then image search on Google, and the stock photos will come up. Like, it's really not very difficult at all. They didn't so much leave breadcrumbs as they did just leave the address to get to the evidence. It was ridiculous. So there was all of that. It was so obviously fucking nonsense. They said they were going to have this meeting at a DC hotel where they were going to reveal all of this stuff, like a press conference thing, which I presume won't be happening tomorrow now, as it's been exposed. But the funny thing is, Surefire Investigations, the shell company that was supposedly doing this investigation, which Jacob Wall and Bergman had worked at and were listed as, and they're the only two people, actual human beings, who we can see are there as actual, operatives at this organization. That organization's phone number, their website, which is no longer there, by the way, their phone number led them to a voicemail, which led you to another phone number, which was registered to Jacob Wall's mother. So literally, the company was his mom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is so embarrassing. And the thing is, it might not even be that she was actually in any way involved in this. It could just be a number that is her number that he used.
Yeah.
Thereby, either she is actually complicit in fraud, or he has wrongly made her a part of a story which could see her imprisoned for fraud.
Jeez. And this is the same guy who did the multiple leaving a hipster coffee shop comments, right?
I'm not
Yeah.
aware of that. What's that?
Do you know this, Kevin?
I've heard about this, yeah.
Yeah, like I think like every time there was he tried to score points by saying that he was leaving a hipster coffee shop, and what did he say about like Democrats talking about Republicans? I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said this thing.
Basically making up shit.
Yeah, and he said it in so many different instances, phrased almost in the same way that someone just looked it up. And he's got this whole host of like leaving a hipster coffee shop tweets. And so it's so obvious.
basically
He's so bad at lying, but he lies so much.
But it's not just
his
him.
entire thing is.
It's
And
the whole right
it's
wing.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just him, but he does have a history of this. He's got all kinds of financial skullduggery in the past as well. He was a pretend hedge fund manager when he was like 18 or something. Ridiculous.
But if you look more broadly over the last few decades, the right wing had made up lies about Acorn because it was a movement that was helping people register to vote. It was getting poor people activated politically in their communities. And they basically undermined Acorn and demonized it and drove it out of business. Then there was the whole Veritas, which is an ironic name, project, where they edited tapes to make it look like Planned Parenthood was engaged in illegal activity.
Yes.
And now this, and also, if you look at cases
And the
of
rape
voter fraud,
Melania sign.
Yep. And so when, and the problem, sorry, wait, let me finish. And so the problem with this is when we then have a conversation, too often political pundits will say, well, when this happens on both sides, it's not the Democrats or the liberals doing this. It's the right wing. And so we really need to distinguish this moral divide between the left and the right in America. The right is willing to lie and deceive people to get into power. And I don't see equivalent conspiracies on the left. We actually have legitimate pain and legitimate victims that are talking. It's not made up,
Right. And, people willing to call out people on the left if they're, I don't know, engaged in assaulting women or whatever. And so when that happens, then it's always like, oh, the left is eating its own. And it's like
exactly,
the left just can't win. Being principled gets you screwed.
Yeah.
And And I found his tweet, by the way. He says just like 6 days ago, I just left a hipster coffee shop in downtown LA. There was a group of young Democrats murmuring to each other that they know the suspicious packages were an inside job to make Republicans look bad. And he has a ton of these tweets, always leaving a hipster coffee shop in downtown LA.
They.
Yeah.
They.
Well, we know that downtown LA is like Inception. Everywhere is just hipster coffee shops with shady groups of young people who know all of these things, obviously.
They're such great political operatives. They're talking out loud in coffee shops where they can be overheard.
Right,
That's
right.
how smart they are.
It's an inside job to make Republicans look bad.
And yeah, there was the rape Melania sign reminded me, but the Jack Posobiec is another one of these fucking people, isn't he? Because he had that outside Trump Tower rape Melania, trying to make it look like the left was saying that. And another one of his infamous ones, which thankfully got caught, was there was like an anti-Trump rally taking place, and he decided to have a professionally made banner which said "Defend Paedophilia."
Oh yes.
And had unfurled that in front of people. And then made it look like, oh, the left are marching to defend paedophilia. But if you just rolled the tape on 4 seconds more, you'd find him being physically accosted and having that sign removed from the front of the fucking thing. Because as soon as anyone saw what it was...
Which, again, the left will be blamed for being too aggressive and not civil enough.
Well, yeah, because it was so obvious that they were trying to make them look like they were defending paedophilia. So he was literally just shoved out of the way and the sign removed because people weren't actually marching to defend paedophilia. It was another smear tactic.
Yeah.
Blair White admitted to
these people want to be thought of as credible journalists. Fuck off.
Yeah, and Blair White admitted this goes on. She was told to do this by YouTubers or other famous people on the right who claim that they did it themselves to get attention and victimhood.
Yeah.
And the thing is, they project onto the left all these evil intentions that don't exist, that then morally justify them doing, they think, in their minds, the evil things back.
Interests are like, well, both sides.
Exactly.
And
What it is, it's accusing the other side of that of which you are guilty. It's the typical Trumpian tactic.
yeah.
It really, really is. Like they've convinced themselves that these conspiracies are all real, so they do their own conspiracies. But it's just them doing the conspiracies.
Oh my God! Did you see that Brett Weinstein, member of the intellectual dark web, what he said about conspiracies?
No,
No,
please
what
tell
did he
us.
say? Did he say it was all the Jews? 'Cause that would have been ironic.
No. Okay. So someone said, okay, hold on. This is not the right one. Oops.
Well, we'll talk amongst ourselves whilst this is happening.
Yeah, by the way, the chat, by the way, they're having a nice conversation. I see some random geek said the truth doesn't matter to the right unless it discredits the left.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and Dorian Sapien said it's infuriating. Conspiracy theorists are impervious to debunking. And also, JD Pretty Nails says hipsters are a Marxist conspiracy.
Well, also Adam Rainstopper just put an emoji of a loaf of bread.
Is that for the bakery?
Yeah, that's yeah.
I had
That's
French
I
toast
don't.
for breakfast, so.
Okay, so he's quote tweeting this other genius called Jeffrey Mueller, who's a weird MRA professor type. And he says, false flag attacks have been common for centuries. Given any act of apparent political terrorism, journalists should always be asking, why these targets? Why this timing? Who really benefits? Could this be yet another false flag? Not asking equals incentivizing more false flags. So then...
Okay. I mean, technically what he's saying there is correct. Journalists should do that. But I think they did and found out that it was like a right-wing crazy bastard.
Brett quotes him and says, we must never presume, but in a high stakes political context, we must always ask the question. That means there must not be a social penalty for entertaining the possibility of false flags.
Well, what a disingenuous prick. Because no one is. No one is saying if you entertain the possibility, if you investigate the claim, that's a problem. But
No,
once it's
but
been
it's
investigated,
like...
but either if you rationally just say false flag as soon as you hear it because it suits you to do so,
Exactly.
or when it's been investigated and found to be like an actual crazy Trump bastard who's been sending these fucking bombs.
No,
Yeah,
but when
the
it's
MAGA
like,
bomb guy.
you know,
And you
over
still stick
10
to
critics of Trump getting pipe bombs mailed to them, the first thing to do is not to jump to false flag. It's to wait for information, right?
Yep.
It's
Yeah, exactly.
highly
Well,
irresponsible for these intellectuals to say that there should be no social penalty for loonies just jumping to the idea that it's a false flag.
There should be for Ann Coulter. There should be penalty, social
For
penalties.
PJW,
Yeah,
for
and
Laura Loomer.
Rush Limbaugh.
Right.
Yeah, there should be
But
social
when
penalties.
it's something against the left, either it's a pinker type, oh, it's a minor event, and then news is at fault for reporting it, or it's like, hey guys, you shouldn't, punish people who are jumping to the false flag theories. It's only right of us to ask.
Which is really interesting because the very people they're defending there are people like the Gateway Pundit who published all that shit about Mueller and have now had to retract because
Which they would never tolerate if it was leftist doing. Ever.
Exactly, yeah. Even though they didn't jump to, not only did they not jump to, they didn't even investigate the possibility of it being a false flag. But on this occasion, it actually was a false flag. Brilliant.
No.
I mean, it's so ridiculous.
No, it wasn't a false flag that these people got sent pipe bombs.
No. The Gateway Pundit about the Robert Mueller claims.
Oh, right. Yeah, this was all in reference to the pipe. Yeah.
No. My point was, I was drawing the way in which they reacted to the pipe bombs with ultra skepticism about, it could be a false flag, when it's obviously disingenuous because they just want it to be a false flag, and the way in which they instantly published the Robert Mueller stuff without investigating the possibility of it being a false flag, even though it was a false flag.
It's their double standard.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I feel the decay of democracy It feels very much teetering on the edge in the States. And, recently Trump is, pushing boundaries again by declaring, oh yeah, by executive order, I can change the constitutional birthright citizenship framework.
Yeah. Well, look, Bannon is coming to Toronto and filling the House. That's pretty depressing. Over here, when he was doing a talk somewhere which offered a free continental breakfast, and only 17 people showed up in the U.S., which is great.
Yeah.
In Toronto, he's given a very prestigious platform, and he's filling the House.
Yeah, well, of course, part of the reason Steve Bannon got knocked off of some platforms to which he was invited was the public feedback to the organizers saying, why are you platforming a white nationalist? And I don't know if that's happening in Toronto, but, if people use their free speech rights to express their concerns about platforming that kind of person, legitimizing what he has to say, maybe the organizers, maybe they won't, but everyone has a right to express their opinion on Steve Bannon being put up on stage. So
Well, yeah,
people can hear it.
Yeah, that happened here in Britain actually. He was invited to, I think it was a BBC event somewhere in Britain, and it was one of these things that was happening over like a course of 2 or 3 days. And on a separate day, but at the same event, was invited to speak Nicola Sturgeon, who was the First Minister of Scotland.
Oh yeah,
So
she pulled out, right?
Yeah, she pulled out. Now this is the thing that some people have said that might be an infringement on free speech because she's she's a government official. She's like an actual person in power. But she didn't say he can't speak at this event.
Yeah.
She just said if he's invited, I won't be going. Which again is her fucking right.
But they'll criticize her.
Indeed, her responsibility as a political leader to show an example.
Yeah, but they'll take anything that sort of even discredits or criticizes or attempts to marginalize hate speech in that way and claim persecution.
Oh yeah.
It's like Carl going on the BBC, Sargon of Akkad, saying, I am the vulnerable minority.
Ridiculous.
Tommy Robinson was on BBC recently where they used his own marketing picture to frame it as, is he just a guy that asks questions that other people don't ask? And it's like, no, don't do that.
No, he's not. Right. No.
Stop marketing him.
It's free. Yeah, it's free publicity. It's free marketing for him. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it turns out he's like, he's just moved into, is it like a £1 million home or two? I don't know.
Yeah, pretty... out there in the Bedfordshire countryside. A real man of the people who's a multimillionaire now because of his
doing well.
The grift. And you have to say, from a purely Machiavellian point of view, he's a great grifter.
Oh yeah,
he's a superb grifter. He's got that down to an art form now. He's literally, and the fact that he's pulling this this court case out so long, he's had 3 or 4 different attending court hearings. It gets a new bite of the cherry every time.
Yeah,
new publicity, new headlines.
People gathering, so he can then say the media is the enemy of the people, and that media will report on him saying that.
Exactly. The media just ignored him. He would go away. Like he's such an unnecessary character. He's not a leader or anything.
Yeah.
But the right wing is full of grifters, whether it's the honey badgers or any of these, selling books.
Lauren Southern and her ilk. I literally asked her on Twitter. She didn't respond, surprisingly, even though she follows me, so I know she fucking saw it. Or she could have seen it anyway. Was that? Do you remember when she was blocked from entering Britain along with Martin Sellner and
Imagine Nawaz was really upset. I remember that.
The IDW were absolutely furious, which instantly made me think they probably deserve to get banned then. Anyway, but after that they said they were going to sue the BBC, sue the British government. Which I mean, good luck with that. Brilliant. But they were going to. But that's their right. They're allowed to sue them. And they put out a video which is still available on their channels, saying, give us money to fund this lawsuit, basically, grifting. And I literally asked her, well, what happened with that? Because no lawsuit was ever even filed, let alone went to court. And yet you haven't given that money back.
What is with all these people just suing, these free speech warriors? They're like...
Well, I'm actually going on the Mythsis Milwaukee podcast tonight.
Oh, dear.
And I intend to ask them that. How dare they say they're their free speech when their headline event was Mario Quadracci funding a slap suit, Richard Carrier carrying out that slap suit, and Sargon of Akkad, who's threatened to sue British newspapers for quoting him verbatim.
Yeah, and Maja
Yeah,
has been threatening to sue anyone who just like randomly asks him, why are you, sharing this article filled with nonsense?
Yeah, I mean, the idea that these people are defenders of free speech is a joke.
And Peterson also suing, and someone else.
He's a really authoritarian prick as well, because he wanted to put together a database of the cultural Marxist professors.
He did.
What kind of dystopian bullshit is this?
Oh, did you see the blowback he got?
Yeah.
They constantly quote 1984.
Did you see? He called out anti-Semitism, and his followers lost their shit.
Yeah, but I was going to mention this with Kristi on Twitter anyway. But do you remember the thing from a couple of weeks ago? Which we talked about, the what do they call it? The influencer network, the alternative influence network.
Yeah.
Kristi?
Yeah.
And the concept of it being a two-way street in terms of radicalizing them, that it's not just the people radicalizing their audience, but vice versa as well. And we've seen that with Peterson recently, when he's come out and said that Trump shouldn't have said X, Y, and Z, and his fans react and he apologizes. Now, I don't know if he's going to row back on this, but Peterson, whenever he tries to step out of that comfort zone of his and say, oh, well, maybe the anti-Semitism thing's bad, guys, and his fans lose their fucking shit, he just puts that extra pressure on him as the content creator to be more extreme, or to at least not react when he sees extremism.
He's backing himself into a corner, it seems. If he wants to maintain any sort of mainstream credibility, eventually he's going to have to piss off his most extreme fans, which is a lot of them are pretty extreme. So I don't know how long he can keep doing this dance, but
did you see Barry Weiss? I saw, well, maybe you didn't, because it was random that she was on Nicole Wallace's, I think, Deadline White House yesterday, but they interviewed Barry Weiss, because I think she's from the Pittsburgh.
I thought he was dead.
No. The woman who wrote
the
article.
Barry White. I'm doing a Barry White joke. Never mind.
Right. And she was talking about how Trump is, sort of not even playing footsie with the alt-right. He's doing even more than that. I'm just thinking, yeah, why don't you write a story about that instead of sort of highlighting and glorifying people who have alt-right people in their base because of the kinds of bigotry and homophobia and Islamophobia that they push.
I really don't think Barry Weiss is in any position to accuse other people of playing footsie with the alt-right.
Yeah. Now, of course, I didn't feel in so much in a moral place to sort of shout at the screen, because she was describing the fact that her dad wanted Trump to come to the city and was on board with that side, but her mom signed the letter from Ben the Ark saying, President Trump, or El Presidente, maybe we should call him now, don't come to Baltimore until you renounce white supremacy. And her parents at that point were not speaking in the house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I didn't really feel like shouting too much at the television. She was obviously visibly upset about it, but I was also like, you are glorifying people who have these sorts of people in their audience and are normalizing these kinds of ideas.
What? A completely different topic, but have you seen what's going on in the chat?
Yes, I have, and I've taken care of it.
What's going on in the chat?
Some random geek just started spamming tons of stuff, and so eventually I had to put him in a timeout to stop him, and the mods are going to clean it up. We'll figure out what happened afterwards.
Yeah, I don't get that. It seems to have broken.
Someone said,
I don't understand what's
exposed?
Who needs to be exposed?
In our some random geek who's one of our mods. He he was just it looked like IP addresses or random numbers, and there were about 50 messages in the row, but we've got mods in the chat to take care of it.
Yeah, that didn't make sense. I don't think that was intentional spamming. It was like he was a robot that had malfunctioned or something.
Yeah, someone said he read the Matrix.
Are we pretty much wrapping up now?
Yeah, because we've got.
Well, that's a very polite way of saying you're boring me now.
No, it's not that. It's Halloween, guys. I got so much stuff to do.
No, that's all right. Let's go
A
have
very
fun.
It's a very North American thing, Halloween,
too.
isn't it?
You've got to do the monster mash.
It's a Saudi Arabian thing. What are you talking about?
It's yes, yeah, indeed. Well,
That's where
let's
I
not go on
first
about
celebrated Halloween.
let's not go on about the monstrousness of Saudi Arabia,
Yeah, let's not get into that. We'll be here for another 5 hours.
Let's go in
where
order.
they literally cut up dead bodies and stuff. So
Jesus
yeah,
Christ. Yep. And sadly, it's not surprising.
All right, well,
Yeah.
let's try to turn this to a more positive way to end the show.
and on
Eiynah,
that bone saw. No,
Eiynah,
no.
do you want to, Eiynah, promote stuff on your channel? Kevin, I know you've got a Keck stuff you can promote, and I'll promote the election night thing. So, yeah, Eiynah, what's coming up next on your channel? What have you recently uploaded to Polite Conversations here on YouTube?
Yeah, actually it kind of relates. I did a conversation with a professor of classics at University of New Brunswick about Orientalism in Aladdin. So kind of touching on those themes of, I don't know, I guess cultural appropriation and things like that. It was a very interesting chat. People should check it out. And also I have coming up a conversation with Guardian columnist Nasreen Malik and YouTuber Destiny on the topic of is sunlight really the best disinfectant? That was a very interesting topic, and I'll be uploading it in a few days, early November.
Excellent. Oh, if I could ask a favor. Oh, you already talked to Destiny. I need to get a hold of him. Can you give me his contact details? Because I want to chat with him again.
Yeah.
Kevin, you got Let Them Eat Keck coming up soon, don't you?
Indeed, that was supposed to be happening yesterday, but Mike Stutchbury, the historian with the mostest, that doesn't make sense. Anyway, yeah, who's my co-host? He had to work late or some
Love that
nonsense.
name, by the way. It's good.
Do I thank you? Yes. Who came up with that? Someone came up with that. It might even have been some random geek who just malfunctioned. Anyway, yeah, that show will now be happening on Friday night at 7 p.m. on one of my backup channels or something. And the strike has nearly been removed, so hopefully I'll be able to host some of these eventually at some point. Yeah, so yeah, 7 Friday at 7, and we're going to be talking about terrorist attacks and fascists taking over major democracies in South America. Yay.
Yeah, that sounds so. Check that out, Kevin's channel. And just a little shout out to Lee Keys, who's dressing up as Ben Shapiro for Halloween.
Oh, God.
So that's good. And I am currently
How do you dress up as Ben Shapiro? Do you have to lose like 2 feet in height or something? How does that work?
Lee will have to tell us.
You have to walk around on your knees to dress up as Ben Shapiro. not inaccurate though. Mean, but not inaccurate.
True. Sometimes the truth is painful. And yes, I am currently working on a video showing how Sargon of Akkad is a gateway to the alt-right. But I'm hoping to have that out sometime around election night. But definitely the next thing on my channel is we're going to be hosting an election night special. Eiynah, if you want to join, you can give a Canadian perspective. We're kind of going American heavy, but we love you. So if you want to drop,
thank you.
Some random geek just gave us an update of what happened. He was doing inventory at work, and somehow it was getting put into the chat box here rather than into whatever system it was. So all I'd say is, why are you listening to us if you're at work? Do work, you lazy fuck.
Oh no, I listen to podcasts at work too, and I have to do kind of no, I'm all about the listening to podcast at work. Oh, and speaking of podcasts, we have changed providers. We are moving over to Podbean because they provide unlimited hosting, and our shows go so long that Libsyn just maxed out. And
Libsyn can officially suck all of my penises. Yes, fuck that.
How many did you have? Dare I ask?
6.5.
Nice.
All right, so you guys should come if you're watching the election night special. So we're not going to do like an evening report, breaking news kind of thing. It's more going to be commentary. So I would suggest that you would put on an election night newscast, like if you're watching MSNBC or CNN, something else. And you could have us on as the background, kind of like an audio commentary to what's going on in between results. That's how I kind of see the show going forward. Kind of like if you're a Packers fan, how you put on the television when the Packers are playing away and you don't like the commentators, so you turn on the Packer radio network and you actually listen to the radio while you watch the TV. That's the kind of thing I'm going for. So yeah, come on by on election night. We're going to be either crying or talking about what investigations will the Democrats be doing in the House first.
Well, all
Maybe
I'm
what
going to say is some people might be crying, but I will be very, very drunk. So
okay.
enjoy.
And the other thing too, we're going to be we've invited Kristi, Steve Shives, and other YouTube stars from the progressive area of YouTube and people who are like leaning progressive. So it should be
evil SJWs.
the evil SJW.
Yes, it's going to be cultural Marxism palooza.
So guys, thank you. All that's left to be said then is that Eiynah is awesome. Go subscribe to her YouTube channel now as soon as the show.
Thank you.
Kevin is awesome. You should already be subscribed to him. Go watch.
Maybe one day I'll earn a follow from Kevin on Twitter. Maybe.
Hang on, I follow you. What?
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't. I'll check right now. Right now.
It's on like Donkey Kong. We can't let the show until we find out who is right.
No.
Oh, this is
No, you don't. See?
What? We've been talking back and forth for fucking ages. How am I not? What? Hang on a second. This needs to be rectified immediately, forthwith.
So it's ending the show with some shade and also some sorting out of the following.
No. It's not shade. It's fucking thirst, is what it is. It's thirsty.
Look, I just assumed Kevin was too cool for me, which is fine.
Well, it's a very sad state of affairs for you if I'm cooler than you. Jesus, that is bad.
So now that we've got that rectified and we're all following each other and everyone, it's a happy ending, which is what we go for here in the happy hour.
Wow.
Guys, Eiynah's been awesome. The chat, you guys have been awesome. Random Geek, thanks for the entertaining spamming of our chat. And I've been Kristi. So to those of you watching in the future, thanks so much for joining us. To those in the chat, glad you were able to get us live. And until next time, guys, I'm all thrown off my.
Bye, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
And say goodbye, Kev.
Goodbye, Kev.
He has to do the bit. All right. Bye, you guys.
Bye.